We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car parked, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
And this is what we also see in the housing kind of like field, of course, when you're looking for a home.
That's a big story.
The first thing they hear is this person is called Mr. Mpata. That alone makes it also really a bit hard, you know? The landlord won't kind of like come to the, like the name, the landlord will most likely take someone who has a name that is actually more alike to his or hers.
Yeah.
You know? And that way we get kind of like disintegrated.
Yeah, you're right. When it comes to services, that your services getting them, there's always that block of you are not belonging here. You are a so-called Mr. Mpata. So it will take you longer because you are Mr. Mpata. You are not Heya Mulla or Heya so and so and so. You know, that's a big problem.
This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, my dear listeners, welcome back again on Hear My True Story podcast. It is me, your host, Otako. What is so special about this week is that we are continuing our conversation with Aldo Onyango. If you want to know about integration, at what point do you say you are fully integrated in the system? Well, today, Aldo Onyango is going to share with us his personal stories, experiences, and moments, and maybe whether he himself considers himself integrated in the Germany system.
With you every week. Hear my true story.
Yes, my dear guest, I'm happy to have you on this wonderful podcast. Hear My True Story. Could you maybe introduce yourself so that the people who are listening to the podcast can know who is speaking behind the microphone or maybe who is in front of the phone talking to us right now?
Yes, I'm really so happy for having had the chance to be invited on this platform here. Yeah, my name is Aldo Onyango. And I'm a citizen of Uganda, of course, living in Germany and specifically in Hamburg. Exactly. So I don't know where to really start from, but I feel, I'm a little excited and just looking forward to, of course, what we are going to talk about here. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's very, I don't know, for me, I feel like being really successfully integrated in the system continues in my life. I feel like it is a process that is going on till I don't know when, but I feel like I'm trying to integrate in the system.
Yeah,
I feel like I need much to integrate in the system because also integration is not a one-way road; it's a two-way road. Understanding the culture of the system and also the people accepting my culture. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So I don't know how you, as a person who feels like I'm integrated in the system, how was it for you navigating this entire process of integration into this system? You know, looking at the cultural differences, you know, seeing how do I connect with the system and also letting go of certain cultural practices that you came with, because everyone comes with something that they can share with the new culture. And also they can decide to pick some, they can decide to let some go, they can decide to leave some. Do you have such experiences of you navigating these cultural differences from home here?
Actually, it was quite a very long journey and quite a groovy kind of like, I would say a tough experience. But still, when I really look at the whole thing, I was like, I also really kind of like had a moment when I really asked myself, I looked so much forward to being so much of a German because it was the society in which I had decided to live in, you know? But I then realized as time went on, like there was that conflict of identity as per the thing of like culture, okay? And tradition and all that. And I realized it's not something you get rid of. However much of German you will speak and all that, but still, when out there, you may convince yourself, yeah, I'm this and that, right? But you still go out there and people will still come back to asking you, hey, so you're from Africa? It's the first question you will hear. So this brings me back to the thing of like saying, okay, people don't have to create that feeling of me looking at myself as a German or part of the German society, but it's up to me to also look at myself as one who belongs to this society because it's where I live, right? And I then say also then to myself, but that doesn't take away the Onyango I was ever since I was a child. So there are those traditional ways of living I started getting rid of, or I started forgetting or disintegrating from as time went on. And I adopted more to certain kinds ways of life here. But still, I still feel a bigger part of the person I was before is what I've remained. Yeah, is what I've still remained to be today, you know? So I still say to myself, with my identity, with my kind of like beliefs, and I don't know practices that I had also back home, I still thought with some of them, I could still live here and I would still be the same Onyango because I can't let it out. That is who I am, you know? So for me, it's really this thing of like the coexistence, you know? How do I make both cultures, traditional ways of life, kind of like come in one pot and still coexist?
Yeah.
Huh?
I get that.
So it's just what I really see, because then I see even here, I also want to sometimes put on my traditional dresses, like a traditional shirt from Uganda. I dress up traditionally sometimes also. Yeah?
Mm.
And it's just this thing of like knowing this is where I come from originally. So, so just not to lose my face, no?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, no? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
no?
and also make food that is from Uganda.
Exactly. I make food from Uganda, and when I have friends and we are meeting, it's the same thing we do. And when we are there also, we have quite conversations. And when we get among people who are back home, originally from back home, we get back again to our old traditions of life back home in Uganda. It comes back, so fast.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah?
I mean, you talked about something with because for me, as I said, I feel like integrating. I'm still in the process of integration. I don't know whether there's a point when I can say I'm completely integrated in the German system, but there's always this challenges, in this process of integrating. For me, for instance, when I'm somewhere and then I'm reminded of I'm not belonging here. For example, when someone puts a statement and say, "Oh, you speak good German." Then I'm like, okay, are you giving it as a positive reaction, or you are giving it as a point like, "Oh, you are not from here, but you're speaking good language that is from this country." So for me, these challenges that I find in this process, for example, when I meet challenges with this, with discrimination, such things really affect my integration process. They can be systematic discrimination that can really block me from really feeling integrated. Because for me to be integrated, I need to have realized how to make my family happy here, be able to be at a level of being employed in the system, be at a level where I can speak for myself in terms of the language, my needs can be met as a person, and also in the point where I feel like people that I met here can also understand my culture background and why I do certain things that way. And I'm also contributing positively to the society. Then I can say, well, I'm probably doing well to this process of integration. I don't know whether you have also challenges that really you found as a person when you're in this integration process.
Yeah, there've really been quite many challenges, of course, of like speaking language, trying your best to actually speak as good as you can, but still being given that feeling of like, come on, I didn't know you also do this, right? Which is for me like, it's an automatic kind of like, it's an automatic way of like putting one into a certain box and thinking, because it doesn't, because this person doesn't look like me, the person can't speak my language, because the person is not called Müller, no, because the person is not called I don't know what, any of those German names, and like you also really feel, when one listens to it, people also react a bit differently, and this is what we also see in the housing kind of like field, of course, when you're looking for a home.
That's a big story.
The first thing they hear is this person is called Mr. Mpata. That alone makes it also really a bit hard, The landlord won't kind of like come to the, like the name, the landlord will most likely take someone who has a name that is actually more alike to his or hers. And that way we get kind of like disintegrated from the society we tend to integrate in.
You're right.
They make it hard for us, that way I find it's not really so easy. And just like you said, you can't feel completely integrated because each time you feel like you've reached a certain point, as per the language, your way of life, and whatever friends you're meeting and all that, you really feel like, when you reach that point, that makes you feel like, I feel like I belong to the society. You will always have a challenge somewhere that will always bring you to that reality of the society, or some members of the society is not actually acknowledging the fact of you actually being part of the society.
You are right.
And that alone, is so disappointing.
You're right. When it comes to services, that your services getting them, there's always that block of you are not belonging here. You are a so-called Mr. Mpata. So it will take you longer because you are Mr. Mpata. You are not Heya Müller or Heya so and so and so. That's a big problem. And I've experienced this because when I was looking for a house where I'm living right now, it took us 1 year. Although both of us we are employed, but I was also a young black African Ugandan man living in Germany at the same time also doing a training. However, I'm employed, I'm earning money, I'm not depending on the social system. It took us 1 year to get where we are. And getting where we are, I got it because I had a network of someone I know in the place where I work. And they told him, there's someone who is leaving a house, then you can. But we did the so-called interviews for a house in city of Marburg. Every time I could go for these interviews, you are a biracial family and you are going to compete for a house with people who are literally in the system where they are born, raised.
Yes.
You are someone in the integration process. You are getting in. You have been here this short. You have a family. You have a wife, and she's at the point she was pregnant. You are in the training, so you see all those things that are around it. Someone could not give a black Ugandan African man living in Germany. That was really hard, and that is one of the reasons I couldn't get a house on the public market. I could not.
Yeah.
It frustrated me. It made me really feel German is not open for me to integrate because the system makes it that even though you have the money, but the person has to take an interview and they decide who takes their house. They decide. I've never met that in my life until when I came to Germany. In my country I come from, it's all about the money. Here, they say there's a social system that supports it, but no, people decide who takes their house.
Yeah.
I hated myself for that point. I really hated being in this whole timeline of integration.
Yeah.
That's when I realized that German is hard. By finding a house as a migrant, it is not easy. I'm sure if there's any migrant listening to the story, they have experienced that. 1 year. 1 year looking for a house. That was really hard.
Yeah, and also when training, I remember us talking also about this thing of your training also, being in class with your fellow classmates.
Yeah.
And just because your German is not yet really that very fluent, that people actually feel like they are better off going in work groups with other people who speak as fluent as them, and none of them feels like they should actually maybe also really kind of like integrate you into their work groups.
Yeah.
As a fellow student, right? And not even having, that kind of like mind, of like asking just to know how you feel like, how they could help you better, and, something of the kind, and everyone is automatically going to and when you really look at those groups in most cases, of course, you'll realize you're the complete the complete minority in the class and still left to deal with most of your classworks alone.
Hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode. Hear my true story.
Yeah, but I think also the point here, from my experience being in the school system here, studying here in Germany, is that when teachers judge you by the fluence of German, you write or you speak, that is a big problem. The moment that is portrayed in the German education system that this person is not able to do that because, we don't expect you to do that because you can't speak the language. Or maybe you are just in the integration and they judge you. They give you points. They call them Noten when depending on your fluence of the language. That's where I find the problem. And that influences the other students or the other classmates to divide themselves because they want to get good marks. So they push you out because the teachers judge because of the language or because of how fluent you are. For example, if it's presentation, they say, he speaks not well, so I would like to work with this one because this one is going to present well, and then we shall get good marks. This is where I found myself in the system of the German education, where groups are created depending on the language, depending who's fluent, where do you come from. You a foreigner, you don't speak well the language, okay. At the same time, maybe you are the only Black African person in class, which is always most of the times. You are either one or two, which makes you the minority. Yeah. And now, after going through such things, I really understand why children from the African migration background or Black people of color need more support. And that's one of the reasons I decided to take this training of being an educator, because I want to see it change by being there too. When these kids see me, I'm there. I'm here to support you. I'm here. I'm like you. We are having not the same story, but there is hope that I'm here in this place for you. So that's the point. So I find it like that. But also the German system, so the society here, the communities are divided according to who and where you come from. Look, you can live in a community, but you create friends. Look at in your friend circles. How many friends do you have? You may find yourself having so many international friends than German friends.
That's true.
That's
very,
the
very
thing.
true.
I have more international friends than German friends.
That's very true.
Yeah. The German friends I know because we are connected because of work, because of hobbies, because of having worked together somewhere in other countries. But then when I make
studies.
Or studies, yeah. And then you find it easier for you to create friends because when you find there's that point of where do you come from, what do you speak, what's your culture. People need to be open for such things.
Yeah, it's true. Very true.
Yeah. So anyway, because of time, our dear listeners, we want to put this conversation to an end by leaving a one simple, maybe question. I don't know if it's a question, but from your experience, what would you advise someone trying to integrate into the system that is new? It could be a German system. It could be a system in Denmark. It could be a system in Britain or somewhere, anywhere in Europe, in the USA. What advice would you give someone trying to integrate into the system? What is the way out to really make you feel like, well, I'm able to integrate?
I think first of all is mastering the language of the country in which you may really find yourself, right? Mastering the language is the first thing. And of course, mastering the language doesn't come from scratch and from nothing. It has to really be worked for. And like I said before, this can only be achieved by talking to people. And, just feeling free to talk to people, Don't close yourself in. Approach people, talk to them. When you don't understand anything, feel free to ask people. Be ready to make mistakes, but mistakes that will lead you to improving, your skills of the language. And of course, when language is learned up to that level, of course, we also have joining different clubs for sure, like sports clubs. It could be music clubs. It could be there are people who also have hobbies in book reading, or there are those also who like going for stuff like poetry or theater groups and all that. Such things are also really quite a very, very, very big a foundation onto which one can build to integrate more in society. Because in most cases, when you meet people, you share the same interests with, the easier it is for you to get along with them and to make friends with them, right? So joining different clubs for sure. And also another thing of also like not distancing oneself from the way of life of the people here, trying to live and to fit within the kind of life people live here. You don't need to be like a German when living in Germany. Yeah? But at least respect their way of living. It's the same thing you would do in Denmark, in the USA, Canada, and wherever you may be. Respecting people's ways of life, you know? And sometimes also when you're interested in understanding, of course, the more you understand why people live the way they live, the much easier it is for you to actually also, and the much easier it is for you to accept living with them that way. And that way it creates that kind of creates a bridge between these people and you. Hence, simplicity somehow in the process of integration. Huh? And of course, also when integrating, of course, knowing, of course, we will always have, having it in mind. We won't be liked by everyone. But in most of these societies we live in, when one comes to terms with the fact that not everyone hates you, not everyone dislikes you. It's just a very small number of people. It's just a small number of people who may make you feel uncomfortable. But in most cases, when you look, as per my experiences, I would rather say, I've realized those who make you feel like you don't belong here just at the very smallest number, but the majority are just very fine people. So always get into life with a positive mind and not think everyone is against you, right? Huh? And trying to identify those people. When you, of course, identify people you don't feel comfortable with, keep a distance and only deal with those who are okay with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that way one can really kind of get him or herself, better into that process. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you so much, my brother Aldo.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. Thanks a lot also for hosting me here.
Yeah. So, my dear listeners, I want to say because of time, we can't go beyond this. So, my dear brother Aldo, maybe you can say a nice goodbye to the dear listeners, to our dear listeners, so that they can maybe next time we shall have you again on the podcast, and maybe something I can say. I'm still in conversation with Aldo to see if he can join me, and he's also a co-host for the podcast, so that, the more people co-host on the podcast, the more content we can create, and the more experiences we bring on board, more knowledge. And I can't wait to hear your acceptance next time, maybe, and then I'll be happy. But for now, you can tell our dear listeners bye, and that's all.
Yeah, so dear listeners, I would really like to thank you so much for giving us the time and for following this podcast. And for sure, like always, we are committed to giving you the best we can give, and keeping in touch with you. And that way, I would like to wish you a good health and Happy New Year. Though I'm saying it at a later stage, but I hope you still accept it. And I wish you all the best with your families, friends, and whoever you take to be dear to you. So be protected.
Thank you so much. Well, my dear listeners, thank you so much for following us on Hear My True Story podcast. It has been me, your host, Otako, and I'm always happy to have you every week. Hope to meet you again next week. Next week, same time, same day. And you can always follow us on all your podcast streaming platforms. And if you have enjoyed our conversations, please don't mind to leave us a comment. Well, because we want to know that someone else is listening to the podcast. It's always so funny. We sit here, talk to each other, and you don't know if someone has listened. Leave a comment. Send us an email. On our email, you can see it in the podcast description, and tell us, well, that was nice. Thank you so much, my brother Aldo Onyango, and I'm happy to always have you on Hear My True Story podcast. And I would like to say bye for now.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear My True Story.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Music by Edwin Matovo, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.